make sure to get that started. Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and launch in. And again, like, please, this is supposed to be, want to make sure everybody has a chance to have their questions and the reason they're here answered. I know many of you in the chat said some of you are here to learn about content knowledge for teaching or CKT. So feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions, or ask questions in the chat as we go. All right. So content knowledge for teaching. If you want to go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So I think as probably everybody on this call probably is very aware of, effective science teaching requires not only a strong understanding of the subject matter, but it also includes other forms of professional knowledge that teachers really draw upon as they engage in the work of teaching science. So content knowledge for teaching, or what you'll hear is referred to as CKT, for most of this presentation today, it really refers to the usable knowledge that teachers draw upon as they engage in the work of teaching. It includes both, the CKT includes both subject matter knowledge as well as pedagogical content knowledge. So for example, when teaching about matter and its interactions, elementary science teachers need to be able to draw upon their understanding of key concepts and ideas related to the topic of matter, such as their knowledge about ways to describe and classify matter, as well as why matter is conserved in various situations. But elementary science teachers also need to be able to use their knowledge about different activities and activities and investigations that are useful to help students develop their own understanding about properties of matter. And teachers also need to understand the previous experiences and conceptions that students bring with them to learn in this topic area so they can leverage them in their instruction. So you can go ahead to the next slide, Svante. So research studies have shown that teachers use their CKT when they engage in critical teaching practices, such as when teachers elicit and interpret students' ideas, when they select and implement instructional activities to address specific learning goals, and when teachers critique, for example, student-generated explanations. In some of our earlier work, we actually convened a national panel of elementary science teacher educators and elementary science teachers to develop this framework that you see here, which we call the Work of Teaching Science Framework. This framework here is organized into 7 different categories that identify different instructional tools that elementary science teachers interact with as they engage in the work of teaching science. So for each of the instructional tool categories, each of those 7 that you see there, the national panel identified anywhere from 3 to 7 different science teaching practices that are critical for beginning elementary science teachers to know how to engage in to productively support student learning. I have some examples there in the chart here. So just one example of one science teaching practice for each of those instructional tool categories. And so, for example, if you look at category 1, it's important that beginning elementary science teachers are able to, for example, choose instructional activities that are well aligned to specific instructional goals. Or if you look at the category 6 scientific explanations, it's important that beginning elementary science teachers can critique student-generated explanations using different criteria and for different purposes. So science teachers' ability to be able to both appropriately and adequately leverage the relevant CKT when they're engaged in these science teaching practices has been shown to actually impact student learning outcomes. And that's part of the reason why we focus on them in our work and in our development of the CKT matter items. So next, please. So in our work, we think about CKT, about matter and its interactions, as really situated at the intersection of science content, that you can see those matter content categories on the left, and the science teaching practices that make up the Work of Teaching Science framework that you can see on kind of the top in the columns there. And this chart really shows those 2 components and the intersection of them. So you can see on the left, the matter content categories include teaching about such topics as properties of matter, changes in matter, and conservation of matter, which are all topics that are addressed in the next generation science standards performance expectations. And on the top part of the chart, where we show those 7 different columns, each one indicates one of the 7 work of teaching science instructional tool categories. On our project, we developed a set of CKT matter assessment items that were designed to specifically elicit pre-service elementary teachers CKT about matter at each of these intersections that you see here. So for example, some of the CKT matter assessment items are focused on having teachers consider how to support their students in conducting investigations to develop the idea that matter is made of small particles. So that's the kind of the call out box on the left there at the intersection of model matter and scientific investigations and demonstrations. And then other CKT matter items focus on having teachers consider how to support students in developing scientific arguments using evidence from investigations to establish that matter cannot be created or destroyed. And that's the other call out box on the right-hand side there. So you may be wondering, what do these CKT matter assessment items look like? So as we go to the next slide here, we show you just one example of a CKT matter item. And in today's session, once you get into our online CKT matter assessment, you'll get a chance to look at upwards of 52 items, because that's how many we actually have on our final assessment that we've developed and have programmed. So this is an example of one of the CKT matter items we developed to address the CKT that elementary science teachers use when they identify scientific resources to use when teaching about properties of matter. So that's really the intersection of the slide before of the properties of matter, content topic, and the scientific resources instructional category. In this particular item here, there's a teacher, and her name is Miss Wu. She's preparing a formative assessment for her 3rd grade students to determine if they understand that matter includes things beyond objects and materials that they can see, feel, measure, and weigh. Miss Wu locates 4 different resources, with each one including a list of 4 different examples for her students to consider. The pre-service teacher, who actually is the one responding to the CKT item, has to determine which of these 4 sets of resources that you see here, resource A, B, C, or D, is the most useful one to address Ms. Wu's purpose. In order for a pre-service teacher to answer this CKT matter item correctly, the teacher would have to draw upon their knowledge about what matter is, their knowledge about student difficulties with matter concepts, and their knowledge about how examples can be best used to address specific instructional purposes. For this item, a pre-service teacher who has the CKT would be able to identify that all of the examples in resource D, so that's a fourth choice there, are examples of matter because they all have mass and take up space. Yet some of them are ones that students may find difficult to recognize as matter, such as gases or matter that's too small to be seen with our eyes, which addresses Ms. Wu's instructional purpose. All of the CKT matter items that we developed and the ones that you'll see later today are scenario-based, meaning that each of these items starts with a scenario like this one does that kind of situates the elementary pre-service teacher within an instructional setting and provides key details about the students, curriculum, or instructional context as part of that scenario. I do have a link there at the bottom, and I don't know if Dante, you might feel free to add that link in the chat for folks. Yep, you could just copy that and add it in the chat. But this is our project website. You can create a free account. And once you create a free account, and Dante will show you this a little bit later too, you'll have access to about 20 different example CKT matter items that will show you all different types of item formats that we use, again, all scenario based, and even includes data from one of our earlier pilots that use those items. So you can see kind of how pre-service teachers tended to respond to those items. And we'll make sure to share this link again at the end once I share the slides with everybody. But if you go to the next slide, just as kind of a brief overview across the CKT matter assessment items, In the CKT Matter assessment that has been programmed and you'll get a chance to access and use today, we've also developed a wide variety of item types. So the one I just showed you before was a pretty straightforward one. It was a multiple choice single selection item. We also have grid and table items. We have multiple choice, multiple select items, inline choice items, and match-in items as well. We also, you'll see, incorporated a variety of different stimulus within the items. So some of the items, for example, have examples of students' written work. Others have, I think at least one, if not a couple, have transcripts of student conversations or video clips or different graphics. And one of the things to note, one of the goals of our larger NSF project was to develop a CKT Matter instrument that actually could be used on a large scale and administered and scored efficiently. And for that reason, all of the CKT Matter items that we developed are discrete, automatically scoreable items. As I mentioned, that website that Dante shared in the chat provides examples of other types of these CKT Matter items. You can take a look there after the webinar, and again, you'll get a chance to look at some on an R-Line platform that we actually programmed in and have in the current final assessment. If you go to the next slide, Dante, this just provides you a very broad overview of our CKT Matter instrument development process. And all of the CKT Matter items that we developed really used an iterative process. It included multiple rounds of review, feedback, as well as refinement across various stakeholders. So for example, our team of 18 item writers conducted multiple reviews of these CKT Matter items. We also had expert science teacher educators and researchers conduct a content review of the items. And we even had pre-service elementary teachers themselves engage in cognitive interviews using a subset of the items where they would actually think aloud with us as they responded to and selected their answer choices for each item. The CKT Matter instrument that we used in our final field test, it included a set of 60 CKT Matter items, and we field tested those with a little over 800 pre-service elementary teachers all across the United States. And we made sure that across the 60 CKT Matter items, they kind of aligned with our test blueprint with specified proportions across those 5 content matter topics and those 7 work of teach and science instructional tool categories. One of the things to note is that we now have, from that field test, we ended up with 52 final CKT Matter items in our final assessment, which is what David will be showing and walking you through. And that's what you'll have access to use in varied ways in your teaching and research. So if we want to go to the next slide there. So unfortunately, we don't have time today because we want to spend as much time giving you a chance to learn about the online assessment and getting in there and exploring its features. So we don't have a lot of time to go into a whole lot of depth about each part of the development process and the findings across these cognitive interviews, our earlier pilot studies, and the field tests. But I just want to highlight a few things before we move on. A few kind of high-level takeaways from our earlier research using these CKT Matter items. So one of the things I first just want to highlight is during the cognitive interviews with the pre-service elementary teachers, we learned that, and this was a really good finding, most of the CKT Matter items actually functioned as hypothesized. And what I mean by that is that if a teacher was responding according to our answer key correctly, if they were choosing what we intended to be the answer key for a particular CKT Matter item, we also had evidence that they were leveraging the relevant subject matter knowledge and pedagogical content knowledge that we had hypothesized that CKT Matter item, right, required to answer correctly. And then alternatively, if a pre-service teacher did not select the kind of answer that we intended to be the answer key, we were noticing there might have been a gap in either an aspect of their subject matter knowledge or an aspect of their pedagogical content knowledge that we anticipated one needed to leverage to respond correctly to the item. So that's what we kind of mean by like those CKT Matter items functioned as hypothesized. Another key finding was that we noticed that most of the pre-service teachers really did recognize the relevance of the scenarios that we had in the items for the work of teaching science, of elementary science teaching. So essentially, they were saying, yes, this is absolutely the work I do as an elementary science, that elementary science teachers are required to do in their work of teaching. And this, is similar to what I'm being asked to do and what I observe other elementary science teachers doing. And then finally, the other good news is that findings from both our pilot studies and our final field tests provided us with pretty robust empirical evidence suggesting that our CKT matter instrument was reliable and could be used on a large scale to support valid inferences about pre-service elementary teachers' content knowledge for teaching about matter. Now, if you're one of those folks that think that was way too quick and way too broad of an overview about CKT, the good news is if you go to the next slide there, we did put a list of, we have 3 published manuscripts about the CKT matter instrument development. It goes into a lot more depth than what I just covered here. And again, I will send this out. There's links to each of those papers in there so you can access them. And if you have any questions, if you are interested and want to read more and have questions after that, feel free to reach out and we are more than happy to engage in follow-up conversations. So I will pause there to see if anybody has any questions. And I'm just looking at this chat. I don't think any questions have come up yet, but I saw Preeti said it'd be great if you can record. We are recording the presentation and can share that. And we'll also share the slides with everybody right afterwards, so you can have quick access to that. But does anybody have any questions or comments about content knowledge for teaching, what it is, our item development process, or what the items entail, before David gets started by introducing the online CKT matter assessment? You'll have a chance to delve in more deeply to looking at the actual 52 items on the online assessment. Okay.
Hey,
so I'm not. Oh, go ahead, Preeti. Go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question. I might have missed this. Could you talk a little bit about how you came up with those items itself when you wrote that as a team? Because we here are trying to come up with certain items regarding matter, the content matter, for our pre-service teachers, and we are looking at GACE and PISA and all those exams, so we're trying to condense and come up with certain questions. So, could you share a little bit about how did you come up with those items itself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also happy to share not only these papers, but we have a few posters from earlier presentations at NARST that kind of outlined I think there's like 11 or 12 step item development process. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out to me afterwards.
Okay,
but I think the key thing that was different for us, and Dante, I don't know if you could share the slides again and go back to the work of teaching science framework slide, which I think is slide 7. But what we tried to start from was actually the work of teaching science. So that was really key for us because we were focused on teachers' content knowledge for teaching. And Dante, it looks like you're sharing the wrong version of the slides because we can see notes as well. So I don't know if you can change your display settings so that you see the other version of the slides. And then go to the slide that's, I think, 2 before that, which is the work of teaching science. But essentially the work of teaching science framework, it identified a set of science teaching practices that for us, we were focused on beginning elementary science teachers and the work that they have to engage in as they teach science, right? And then what we did was we started from there. And then what we did was so if you go to the slide right before, there you go. So we took and these are just examples of the science teaching practices. We have each of those 7 categories has 3 to 7 science teaching practices in there. And then what we did was we took a look at those and we layered it with the matter content topics, like, the work you have to do when you're teaching at the elementary levels about conservation of matter or properties of matter. And we said, what are the specific kind of scenarios or the work that elementary teachers, whether you're the K2 level or 3-5 level, when you're trying to address this next generation performance expectation, and then you're engaged in this particular science teaching practice, like what does that actually look like in context? And that's how we did a lot of our brainstorming. We also we reviewed a lot of like different curriculum resources. We reviewed the empirical research literature. We reviewed the practitioner literature that was out there around these matter content, these 5 matter content topics. But then always thought, so what is the work that an elementary science teacher is engaged in? And then what is that content knowledge for teaching that they're leveraging when they're engaged in that work as they teach about, you know, fill in the blank, conservation of matter or properties of matter. And it was always with a particular performance expectation. So I don't know how much that helps because it's a very, I would say, complex process, but it's different from just saying, what is the subject matter knowledge, right? It's the intersection of the subject matter knowledge and the pedagogical content knowledge. And that's why we start for the work of teaching science layered across these particular matter content topics.
And in the process, did you get inputs from the pre-service teachers or from any in-service teachers at all?
We absolutely did. So we had a team of 18 item writers on our project, and those 18 item writers were a group of folks that were elementary science teacher educators, elementary science teachers. There were a couple that were more like science assessment developers. And a lot of times people fit in a bunch of different of those categories, right? Because you might have multiple roles. But across our team of 18 item writers, it was folks that had all that varied expertise, that because we wanted to ensure that we had varied perspectives as we were generating and then reviewing these items to see, are these actually measuring, you know, elementary science teachers' content knowledge for teaching, and you know, are they actually authentic in terms of this is actually the work that elementary science teachers engage in when they teach, you know, in these areas trying to address these particular performance expectations. So absolutely, I think that's really critical. And then the perspective of, like, we did with all of the items, we did interviews with at least 5 pre-service elementary teachers, and they would do think alouds with us as they would actually answer the item and tell us about what they were thinking, what they were noticing, any things that were confusing or challenging about the item. And then we also would ask them about, like, how well does this align, the scenario align to what elementary science teachers are, you know, actually have to engage in when teaching about this particular topic. So that was a really important part of the process.
That helps. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So I see Bridget's question here. Bridget, do you want to come off and ask it, or you want me to just go ahead and read it and respond? It's up to you. I'll go ahead and read it then. So Bridget said, elementary ed science teaching often gets very little attention in teacher preparation. How confident were you that the teachers in your pilot were knowledgeable enough about NGSS, which is the next generation science standards, the science they are expected to teach students? And then the few other questions: can you describe the pool of pre-service teachers in your study? Were they in traditional teacher ed programs, alt group programs, etc.? All right, so I'll try to take on all of these. So the first one, I think, is a really good question about how, you know, the confidence of how confident were we that teachers in our pilot were knowledgeable about the next generation science standards and the science they're expected to teach students. So I think one thing that's actually important to note is that I would say, one, that there was variation in that. And actually that was really helpful for us, that there's, like, we actually wanted teachers that, some teachers that would be more likely to do well on the content knowledge for teaching about matter assessment items, and others that maybe might not have had as much experience or opportunity to learn in this area. So they might potentially have some gaps in their content knowledge for teaching about matter. And so I think that was variable, and actually that variation is actually helpful for us, because it, you know, if everybody just came in and one just you know, answered all the items correctly, right, we actually wouldn't know, like, if somebody maybe did have a gap in their content knowledge teaching about matter, like, do these items actually function as hypothesized? You actually need to know kind of that variation across the board to be able to better understand how the items are functioning. So I think how confident, I mean, I think there was variability, and that actually is shown across the pilot studies that there were very few items that everybody or almost everybody got correct, right? Kind of 95% or more of the pre-service teachers answered as anticipated, or I guess aligned with the expected answer key. And alternatively, there were only a small number of items that almost everybody didn't answer as expected. So we did have variation across the board in our pilots. And if you're interested in looking at what that looks like, we do have on our CKTScience.org website about 20 different CKT matter items we use in our pilot. And for each item you open up, you can actually see the pilot results to see some of that variation. The other two questions you asked about the pool of the pre-service teachers in our study and kind of where were they coming from. So both in the pilots and in the pre-service teacher population, we actually recruited elementary pre-service teachers that were all across the United States to participate in both the pilot and the field tests for this project. And the pool of participants ended up being the pool of participants that had recently taken the ETS's practice teacher licensure assessment. So we actually had teachers that were from many different states across the United States, but also in different teacher preparation programs. I would say most of them did tend to be in more traditional teacher preparation programs because of that sample we were drawing from. But I think we also had a smaller proportion in other types of programs. Those results for those populations are actually reported in the science education paper from the cognitive interviews we did, and also in the field test paper that was just recently published as an early view in the Journal of Research and Science Teaching. So you can take a look at those demographics in both of those studies to see specifically the number and percentage of folks. Any other questions before we move on and get to what I'm really excited about, the actual online instrument? Well, go ahead and feel free to add in the chat or come off mute if you'd like to ask any questions or make any additional comments. But with this, I'll go ahead and hand it over to David now, and he is going to introduce our online program CKT Matter Assessment Instrument, demo some different features for you, and hopefully get everybody set up with an account so you can go in and look at some and explore some of the features yourself.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to begin with a very brief introduction with some slides, and then we will jump into the system and hopefully get you started. The first thing that we wanted to mention is that there are two very different ways in which you can access the system. The way that we will be showing you today is the focus on teacher educators that will allow you to work with groups and allow you to collect data for different respondents. But there's a different way that if you were interested or someone else was interested in just taking the test, they can, in a sense, skip all of the things that we will be discussing today and jump directly into the assessment. And that is accessing this initial link, which we call the individual user route. This is going to be available for you to look at the presentation. The link is always available for someone who just wants to take the test. But today we're going to be focusing on this strand. We're going to be showing you what you can do when you log into the system as a teacher educator and create your account in that way. So very briefly, when you go into, I'm going to copy the link because if you want to play with the system right away, it will be good for you to start already accessing the link. I'm going to paste it on the chat. 1 second. Sorry, I lost track of the chat when I was sharing. Here it is. So if you go to that link, you should see a screen very similar to this. If you get there, just wait for me a second. We will walk you through in a minute. But this is a web application. As I mentioned earlier, this is a web application that has been adapted from some previous work that has been developed by Mark Wilson at UC Berkeley and the BEAR assessment system software. And once you get in, you're going to see a typical web app screen. This is a type of application that should allow you to deploy this assessment to anyone who has a relatively modern computer. Basically, we don't support, for instance, these very old browsers like Internet Explorer. But if someone has a modern computer with a large enough screen, they should be able to access the assessment without any trouble. And the only thing that I want to highlight before we get into the actual system is that once you log in as a teacher, you will see basically 4 main areas of the system. One area is the items that will allow you to zoom into specific items. If you have any questions or you want to go back to a specific question, I will show you this. There's the activities area, which is a name that we use to describe the groups of items that the people will see when they take the assessment. This basically will allow you to access the surveys and the assessment itself. The delivery section, this is an important section. This will allow you to create and schedule when people in your classes should be able to access the test. And finally, the report section. And this is obviously a very important section that will allow you to interpret what you are getting out of the responses. But Dante will be focusing on explaining you that section today. So just keep in mind that what we're going to be doing today is we are going to log in the screen. We're going to walk you through and hopefully resolve any questions regarding creating your account. And then we are going to walk you through this main initial screen with these 4 different sections. So with no further delay, let's jump into the demo. And these are 2 important links that you should have at hand here. The first one is the one that I already pasted. If you guys can show with thumbs up or thumbs down, if you are already able to access the system, that would be great. Or in the chat, if anyone has any problems accessing the system, please let me know.
I wonder if we want to pause for a minute or two to give folks just a moment to be able to go ahead and create their account and also make sure to look right in your spam folder potentially. Is that correct?
I was gonna. Yes, one I'm going to 2 things. The other, I'm pasting another link that you may want to also open, which is the teacher manual. I'm going to share the second link that I just shared. It will be useful. It is a step-by-step guide of operating the system as a teacher. Here, if you at any point get lost, this is basically a written version of the description and the explanation that I will be giving today. So if you are already in the link, the first thing that you need to do, because you don't have an account, is click in this link, don't have an account. If you look at the teacher educator manual, it says the same thing. You should go here to don't have an account, and this will ask you for your email, which is the first step into getting into the system. And as Jamie was saying, this what is supposed to prompt is an email that the system will send you to your email with the instructions that you need in order to start creating your account. You may experience some delay in getting your that initial email, so don't panic if you don't get it right away. I'm going to highlight that in the teacher manual. If you notice closely, in the second step, we have a specific line that says what to do if the confirmation email is not received. And that is because a number of things can happen. The time that it takes for you to get the email can vary depending on your server. Sometimes there are issues with the spam folder. So if you click here, it will take you to this helpful FAQ that it's listing some of the different things that may happen and what you can do in order to make sure that you can get that initial email. I don't know if you have been able so far to log into the site and put your email in order to get that first step. Excellent. We have one person that is already.
Looks like Jackie is in, and we'll just wait, and Shiroshi's in as well. We'll give folks, oh, great. Demetrius is in. I'll just wait another minute or so for other folks to give them time as well.
Excellent. So I'm just going to, again, if you are already are in the system and you get the email, once you receive the email, you will see a link, and this link will take you to a page that will ask you to confirm your account. You can see, you should see this right here. And an important point to keep in mind is that there are some requirements. I'm going to make this a little bit larger so you can see it. Some requirements for the password that you need to be able to fulfill. And by filling this form, you will be able to confirm your account. After you successfully input your name, last name, password, and password confirmation and confirm your account, you should be able to go ahead and log in into the system. Basically, that means going back to this page, you should be able to enter your email and the password that you selected, and that should take you into this page. I don't know if you can, at the moment, see, have you guys received the email? Are you trying to confirm your account?
I think I see 4 folks that are in, and I don't know, Misong or Bridget, are you all in as well? And Damala, or do you need a little bit of help?
I'm in, but I couldn't find out this page, the assessment tools.
You should be able to, if you confirm your account, you should be able to go to, I'm pasting the link again, you should be able to go back to the login page and put your email and password, and that should take you into this page.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Great, and Bridget is all set too.
Once you have confirmed your account and you have been able to log in for the first time, you should see a page very similar to this one. There might be some different, slight differences because you will not have already information or classes created, which is what I'm going to be introducing to you now. I'm going to start slowly by going back to the point that I was making earlier in the slides. You will see that there are 4 here in the upper corner. There are 4 different options that you can access sections of the website. Before going into that, I'm going to use this opportunity to remind you that in addition to the link that I already provided for you with the teacher manual, you can always go to this corner of the system here and get help. You can, if you go there, you will see a bundle of resources. This is an explanation of what is going on in each one of the pages. In the system, you can again find the link for the teacher educator manual, and also find a link to the FAQ section that I briefly mentioned. And you will find the emails of people you can contact in order to get support, either regarding the content of the site, or if you need assistance with the site itself because of any kind of technical issues. Okay, so I think that everyone has been able to log in here. If not, please let me know so I won't get ahead of myself. If everyone is already here, I'm going to briefly then start describing you the different sections. I'm going to start by showing you the activities section, just to give you a quick look at what is the assessment that we will be giving using the system. Here you see that the activities are actually 4 activities that show you exactly what someone taking the assessment will see. Anyone who starts to take the assessment will receive first a consent. You can click view, and here you can review in detail what is the consent that they will be shown, what are the options that they can select, and you can access this anytime you want if you have any questions via the activities section. You will see that we have a background questionnaire that is also presented to people taking the assessment. You can see all of the questions that they are presented to them, again in this section, and as well a perception survey that they see at the end. But the key aspect of the system is the CKT matter assessment, which you can also review in detail here. You see here, let's call it an abbreviated presentation. When you are taking this, you see the assessment page by page. But here you see that it's saying it says page 1. This is what it's presented in page 1, page 2, so on and so forth. And you can review each and every one of the items in an abbreviated form. So this allows you to skim through the assessment, the entirety of the assessment that the persons will be able to see when they are responding. I will briefly note that each question has a number. And if you were really interested in afterwards referring to a single question, you can always go to the items section, for instance. And it's like, I remember that question 16 was particularly interesting for me. And I can take a view of that single item if that is something that would be helpful, for instance, for discussing with someone or presenting this particular item as part of an activity. I don't know if there are questions so far. What I've been showing you is like the capabilities of the system that allows you to visualize the assessment. We haven't gone into the key functionality, just in case anyone was a bit behind accessing. Are there any questions so far, or should we just go ahead?
There are no questions in the chat, but please feel free to add questions or just come off mute if you have a question to ask David.
Okay, so if there are no questions, and feel free to interrupt me if any question comes up, I will jump into the key functionality of the system. So if you want to deploy this assessment and you want to assign it to a number of people, the way that you would do that is go to the delivery section, which hopefully is intuitive. I want to deliver the assessment. And here we already have some data collections that have been set up, but what you will see, it will be empty. You can, when you're starting, select the option Create New. Notice that in the home page, you can achieve the same thing by clicking on the button New Data Collection. This is just an easier way of getting to the same place that it's Create New Data Collection. And when you do this, and this is the first thing to keep in mind, there are 2 main ways of creating a data collection. One of them is to do a pre-test and post-test. The key idea here is this is something that you would do if, for instance, you're starting to work with a bunch of persons and you want to see in time to what extent the results that they are getting in the assessment have changed. If there's been progress between for instance, the beginning of the semester and the end of the semester, you would select the pre-test and post-test. And this is the first example I will give you. However, there is a simpler option, which is just a single application. In this case, this is a scenario in which you simply want to apply the test once and see the results, but you're not interested in doing a comparison in 2 points in time. If you want to do a pre-test and post-test, the first thing that you will need to introduce in the system is whether you want to apply it to a new or an existing class. We're going to start creating a new class. Here is suggesting an automatic name. This is because this is a fake teacher account whose last name is Miller. So if my last name is Torres Rivera, if I had logged in with my account, this would suggest Torres Rivera 23. I am going to say that this is my, let's say, fall 2024 class, and I'm going to call it that way. And this is important. In order for the participants in this class to access the assessment, you need to have a specific keyword that is unique for that classroom. In this case, I'm going to say also is the fall 2024 account for me. I'm gonna use the same keyword here, but I could put any other memorable thing that you feel may help your participants remember this could be, you know, I don't know, oak would be just for one example, any kind of name that you wish to put that is unique for the participants in your class. So I'm going to do fall 2024. And you need to then decide what are the dates in which you will be applying both the pre-test in these 2 points and the post-test. So you need to select a starting date. For instance, I'm going to say they can start taking the test today, and they can finish the pre-test by the 30th of December. And then I'm going to say the post-test, I want them to respond to it in June, and I'm going to give them the entirety of the month of, June 2024 to answer. Does this make sense? Any questions so far?
I would like to ask question, is there any different score or different points of each item, or there are similar points of each item?
It's just one assessment that you would be allowing the participants in this classroom that you're creating to access in 2 different points in time. It's not operating with different forms. It's the same assessment that you will be allowing them to take. So when you create this, basically they will have a first opportunity to access the questions, the entirety of the assessment, in this case in the month of December of this year, and a second window for answering the same assessment on June of next year. If I go ahead and click submit, what you will see here is that now I have created my fall 2024 classroom and the 2 periods of time where people can access the assessment. So if I created correctly the class, I should see these rows, but more importantly, below in my classes, you will see that it is the class fall 2024, and there's a link here. And this is the link that I need to share with my class. You can click in that little icon in here that conveniently will copy that link. You can include that link in any email or communication that you have with your class in order to share that link with them. And what will happen is that if you give them that link and they go to stagingcktmatter.com, enroll, and remember that I mentioned that this has to be a unique address, something memorable, and they click there, they will, the members of your class will be asked to create an account. Remember that this will allow you to identify their answers, and obviously their participation is conditional also with informed consent that will determine what information is later on available for other people to see. But here, the members of your class can create an account, and when they create their account, they are able to access the system. I am going to stop here for a couple of minutes to make sure if that everyone has been able to create a class with the pre and post test, and then everything is working for you. If you can give me some feedback regarding how are you doing.
So David, you'd like them to go in and try setting up a new data collection like you just did? So just to make sure that they can do that?
Yes, sorry, I guess I assumed that everyone was going to be so.
Everybody might have been following along as well and clicking the same thing, but they might not have. Okay, Demetra said all set from their end.
So, just I'm gonna give Alex a minute to
Would
see if
folks
anyone
like
else-
a few minutes to go ahead and try that out?
Yes, I think I would like to try that.
Okay, go ahead. We'll give folks a few minutes and then just ask some questions or come off of mute as you're trying to set up a new data collection just to make sure it
Yes.
works.
If you have any questions in the meantime, just feel free to ask.
So for the class URL, should we make our own URL or automatically will send by the system?
Here, look, the system will automatically create the URL. I'm going to quickly create a new class to illustrate with a different name. If I go to, oh, sorry, just 1 second. I'm gonna, the system is now showing you the student view. I logged in as a student to show you what they will see. Just give me 1 second to enter. Okay, so when you go to delivery and you create a new class, again, this is a new example. Here, when you are creating the pre and post test, it's asking you for the classroom URL. And here I could call it my class 2023. And I'm just going to add some dates here to make sure this works out. Notice that this is the name of the name, any name that I want to give my classroom, but this is important because this will define the URL that you will give your students. So if I create this, notice that now I have a third class here that's called new example, the one that I named, and notice that the URL, it's automatically created with that word, that keyword that I use. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
And I think one question, David, that you said for if you wanted your pre-service teachers then to actually respond to the CKT matter assessment, you could go to that clipboard and copy and paste the URL and then send it to your teachers in an email, correct? Is there any
Exactly.
way to send that link directly from the system straight to your pre-service teachers? Or is it more that you have to copy and paste it and send it in an email to your teachers?
You need to send it shared by your own means. The system will not allow you to enter directly their emails. You need to share that with your class in any digital means that you're usually contacted. So just to give you an idea of what they will see, when participants in your class fill in the form, they will automatically, and they register a valid password, they will automatically be taken into this screen. This is a much simpler screen that basically is saying you're in CKT Science, and it shows their open assignments. Because we are giving different dates for the pre-test and post-test, now I am only able to access the pre-test, and I can click and start the activity. as I mentioned, when we quickly look, I start by deciding whether I consent or don't consent to allowing my answers to be used for further research. You can review the consent in detail there. And if I agree, I go into the background questionnaire. So I will quickly answer in this questionnaire. Just filling in. And we get to the assessment after this initial survey. And you will see that we already mentioned that there are 52 questions and that a second section after the assessment allows for a survey regarding the perception of the assessment. And here, respondents will be able to review the instructions to the assessment and begin. Here we find question 1 that presents one of the scenarios that we were discussing earlier and the questions. And here, and I'm not going to walk you through the assessment page by page, there are 52 questions. This is going to take a while. Also, I'm afraid I personally wouldn't do very well answering, and I don't want to embarrass myself. But the persons in your class will be able to take the assessment just step by step, going next answer, next answer, next answer. The system records their choices. If they were to get disconnected, they will restart the assessment wherever they left off. And I am going to make a brief pause here in case there are any questions before going back to the teacher view, what you will see when people are enrolling and accessing the system. Any questions so far? So if you have successfully shared the link with your class, what you will see, and here I'm going to show you, this is like a cooking show where we have some pre-made progress with the dish. For instance, here we have a classroom that was already created that has been shared. So if you go to view that pre-test, this will show you all of the people that have already registered there. And notice that if these are your actual respondents, members of your class, and they have introduced a name, you will be able to see it here with their emails. And it's telling you anyone who created an account will appear here, and you will be able to see if they were able to complete the assessment or whether they have not completed. It says not started.
And David, what would it show if they went in and completed like half of the assessment? What would the status say?
The system it's only mentioning, it only highlights when the assessment is completed. So the fact that they are here on the list means that they have already accessed the system. And the fact that they are not completed means that they are at some point between creating their account and answering. But we are not giving you detailed information regarding, for instance, a percentage of completion. It's just telling you that
so would it
completed or not.
Would it say not started then, even if they've completed half of the assessment? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is what you see. Notice here we were in the delivery section. We were looking at this example. Here you can see in the delivery section in this fall 2024 example, I created my account. You can see that that's my account, that's my email, and that allows you to see that I created the account and I'm working on it. You can see, because we created this pre and post test, you can separately view how people are doing in the pre and post tests. And potentially you can also edit some aspects of the collection you created. In particular, you have the possibility of editing the dates. For instance, let's say that you gave them a week or a month, and some of them have not been able to complete and ask for more time. You can flexibly extend the amount of time that the activity will be available for them. That here, when you go to the home, when you just log into the system, you can see that this is showing you all of the classrooms and all of the open assignments that you have created. That allows you to quickly see what are the different classes and whether it's a pre or post test that is currently underway. And you get a summary of the different classes that you have created and access to their links and the possibility to copy them in order to share with the persons in your class. One important feature that I want to highlight, in addition of viewing a class, which is showing you all of the names and all of the emails, is that you can, in case that for some reason someone that shouldn't be part of your class gets access or a hold of your link, you can remove them from the class if you feel that that is necessary. And those are the key functionalities that you as a teacher educator will need in order to create the assessment and make it available for your the members of your class. I want to briefly remind you that you always have, whether you are logged in or not, access to the manual, ckTmatter.com manual, that walks you step by step in each of the screens that I have been showing you, and also has information regarding the reports, which again I will not discuss because Dante will go into details on that section of the website. But you always have access to the teacher manual in order to help you with any questions. You can also access the help that will take you to the FAQ with a number of other questions that you can review if they feel pertinent to your situation. And at this point, I will just briefly stop and see if there are any questions regarding the functionality of the system.
Thanks, David. I'm wondering how the students, they can print their work.
We have no, there is no feature that would block them from taking a screenshot or printing. Once they finish, they can review their answers and their work. This again, Dante will go into more details regarding the reports. What I would say is that no one needs to necessarily print it. You can always access, as I mentioned, there is a way to directly go into the assessment. The assessment is not in any way protected, it's public, so there is no reason that you would be barred from accessing later on, and if they want, they can certainly print it.
Oh, okay. Thanks, because science sometimes we need to draw, right? So if we print out, then we can also have some conversation with the peers and the teachers, even the parents. That's why I'm asking you.
Absolutely, and again, you don't need, as a teacher educator, you don't need to go into the assessment. That's what, all you need to remember is what are the number of the item that you feel was interesting or important and you want to discuss, and you can access them directly here in the item section. And you should be able to print this as you print any regular website. We don't have a specific print option, but as you can use your browser's capabilities in order to print it. Notice that it not only includes the question, it also includes the answer, what are the correct answers, in this case, options A and C.
Oh, thank you so much. So would you correct me if I understand correctly? So teachers and students also, they can access to the items, right? So they can choose some specific items.
The teacher educators have access to this screen that I'm showing you, and you get access, for instance, to the items, and you can jump in. A member of your class or a respondent can see the assessment and then can review the results, but they don't have access to this particular screen that I'm showing you right now.
Oh, okay, I got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, I have a question for do the students will receive any kind of a notification between the start date of like pre-test and the end date of the pre-test, or as a teacher I have to make them remember to fill that out?
We did not include any automatic reminders in the system, particularly because we want to be very careful of not be tagged as spam by any server. So we try to reduce the emails to the minimum that is necessary for the system. So you would need to let them know and remind them if necessary when the windows for answering are open.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, David, I have one more.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm wondering, is it possible for students also retake their test so they can see any history?
Yes, I did not, well, you can certainly allow them to do test retest. You can open new single test if anyone wants to. And if they log in as a single respondent, you are able to retake the test. That is an option that the system allows for respondents.
Thank you.
Obviously, if you have any questions, please let me know. But as I was mentioning at the very beginning, the key functionality for teacher educators is fairly straightforward. You basically have two options to view the material and access it in a way that it's convenient for you: the activities section and the items section. And actions, the key actions that you can take are related to delivery, which is, as I showed you, the possibility of creating data collection, pre-test and post-test, or single applications. And the other main part of the system is the reports section, which, if there are no other questions, I think we are in good shape to move on to that section and allow Dante to present it. Of course, I don't just want to make sure there are no other questions at this stage. Apparently not. Jamie, I don't know if you have any comments or anything that you feel I should clarify in addition to what we've been discussing.
I don't think so at the moment. Hopefully it looks like everybody's in and we're able to create their account, and hopefully they're able to try out creating a new data collection so they could see how that works. But I definitely say as everybody has a chance after this webinar to get a chance to even explore some of the features in more depth, reach out with any questions you have. We're happy to answer them at that time. But I think we're ready to jump into talking about the score reports. Yeah, go ahead, David.
I will. Sorry, I will. There's only one thing that I will let people know. I think it's important. When you create an account as a teacher educator, that email is associated with you as a teacher educator. If you wanted, for instance, to try the experience of a respondent, a member of your class, you will need to create that account with a different email. You cannot have a single email associated with two roles. That is something that I just want to let you know in case you want to try a different experience from the side of the respondent later on. And with that, I am done.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That if you want to go in like your students do, you have to create that account, but using a different email than you use for the teacher educator. Yeah, thanks for remembering to say that, David. That's really helpful. Okay, well, yeah, go ahead, Dante.
Go ahead, David. Yeah.
No, I just going to hand it over to you and say now we're going to do a deeper dive into the score report, which just says, remember, independent if you're an individual user, or, an individual user would be like a pre-service elementary teacher signing on themselves to go ahead and take the full assessment, or even if you're a teacher educator and just want to try it out to see what it's like, you could do that. So you would get an individual report, or if you're a teacher educator and you're assigning this across a group of pre-service elementary teachers you're working with, then you as a teacher educator would actually get a score report across the whole group of teachers that you assigned it to. So that's what Dante is going to show us next.
Right, thank you. And I think this is a connection to what David presented in terms of, okay, these are the display and the way to create accounts. And I will be focusing on the score report that will be shown after, for example, you as a teacher educators complete one or a single administration or a pre-post administration, and the results can be displayed in the system. So, but before going over the report, I want to show this list about characteristics of score reports in general, and for the case of teacher educators, that guide the design of this score report. And the first important component in terms of good practices for designing score reports are the importance of design score reports based on user needs. And in this case, for example, well, we account for the feedback from teacher educators and different participants in our project, like researchers from our advisory board, that provided some guidance in terms of how the report can be more helpful for users, and in this case, teacher educators, and also thinking of what the research says about design features of these score reports. And another point that is important is that score reports need to consider multiple representations of the performance of the users, in this case, pre-service teachers, for example, through tables or graphs or guidance to interpret the results in order to support users, primarily teacher educators, in understand the performance, compare, for example, to different frameworks, and also to be able to decide what to do after having the results. Another component that is important is inform the pre-service teacher results based on a reference framework. For example, what Jamie presented before in terms of the content categories, or the work of teaching science framework, in order to make connections to the constructs that design the assessment, and also to decide what to do next. And the fourth important point is that a score report needs to have connections to actions that teacher educators can make in order to decide what to do, how to support the users, in this case, pre-service teachers. So having this in mind, I will go over in the website on the score report. If you have access later to the PDF, you can see the screenshots as a reminder of the different sections, but in terms of being more interactive, I will show them in the website. So let me move to which is here on the website. So, well, David showed these sections, and I will focus on the report, which is the last one on the top bar. This is a page that has been populated with results of test takers, or a group of pre-service teachers, and this is a case of a pre-post administration. If it was a single administration, the report will show the only one administration. So you have two options. One is view reports, and the second is export data. I will go first on the view reports. Any question that you have, or you may have later, regarding the sections, just let me know. You can write on the chat, or you can just jump in and say your question. Okay. So this is the first section, the one that you enter first when you enter to the report. And this is basically an introduction of the score report. I will summarize the text. The first paragraph describes what the CKT assessment is about. It's similar to what Jamie described at the beginning. What are the constructs that are associated with the assessment? And also, well, it's also suggesting to review the CKT science website in order to learn more about those constructs. A second part of the introduction describes the process of development, and in particular, focusing on the field test that was administered in developing the instrument. So there's a reference score which was obtained through the field administration, which is and you can see more details later. But you can also see in this section a summary of the 4 sections that are in the score report. One is named scale scores, the second is named class summary, the third is named item map, and the fourth is named acting on your results. So this provides a short summary of the sections, and well, we're going over each of these. And also you can see that, well, each one is has the link to access to the section, but also you can see it on the top. So this is the first introductory part of the report, and let's move to the first one, which is scale scores. Before that, any questions about this section? Okay, that's the same. So let's go to scale scores, which is the section that describes the results. In this case, it provides the scores from a pre and post administration. You can see a table at the beginning on the top related to the scores and other types of data related to administration. So going over the columns, you can see, well, the names of the pre-service teachers that completed the assessment, similar to what David presented before, the score on the pretest, information about the standard error of measurement, which provides a reference about the uncertainty in the measures of the measurement. Also information captured in terms of the typical time to respond each item in terms of minutes. Similar, the 3 columns are connected to the post-test. I want to show a couple of features of the table that are helpful to support teacher educators in analyzing or filtering information. First, you can see the questions mark sign that indicates some description of each column. For example, the pretest score indicating what can you do with them, similarly to the definition of the standard error of measurement applied in this case. A second feature that is interesting here and helpful is the sorting feature. For example, if you want to sort from the lowest to the highest in terms of the values in each column, is something that you can do. For example, here from the highest to the lowest in terms of the standard standard error of measurement, similar to the pre and the post scores. If it might be cases that, for example, well, a pre-service teacher didn't complete the test and might be blank. So it's something that you might notice. Another feature that is important here is filtering. And let me show you the examples of the 2 last columns related to levels of performance, which might be high, medium, and low, depending on the average or the score on the assessment. For example, if I want to filter by low in the pretest, the table only filters those pre-service teachers who were in that particular level, similar to, well, high, and we can identify, for example, those who were high in the pre and the post test. So the table with the description of different information from the test in the pre and the post in this case can be organized in multiple ways. Also, I forgot to say that, well, there is a column about the gain score and the standard of measurement associated with the gain. So if I scroll down, we have several representations that can be helpful for different users in order to interpret the results. For example, this bar indicates the class pre-test and post-test scores, and it's also indicated in relation to the field test application administration, which had a average score of 300. So in this mock class, for example, well, we can interpret that there was a progress between the pre and the post, and it was the scores in both cases were higher than the field test administration. Similarly,
And Dante, just as you move up, I just want to make sure it wasn't filtered still at the top, that is showing all pre-service teachers. Okay, great. That took the pre and post. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. For example, we have the name.
Yep. Okay, it's not filtered anymore. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Other, and we have here a set of tables and charts. This is related to the levels of performance. Both, well, the information here is the frequency of pre-service teachers that were in each level, indicating percentage and frequency, similar to what is listed in the table. And also we have a chart that illustrates the frequency of pre-service teachers who were in particular score ranges. We have on the left the pre-test and the post-test on the right. So can be an easy way to compare the distribution of pre-service teachers in different score ranges. So overall, this page provides multiple representations and data to help teacher educators to interpret the results of the assessment in terms of performance and other variables. I don't know if you have questions or comments on this scale scores page. Well, no, I will show later, but you also have the opportunity. Someone asked before if it can be the results can be printed. In this case, well, the scores can be downloaded and exported and downloaded, and somehow can be printed or displayed. For example, if a teacher educator wants to show the results to the class or the representations as well. Okay, let's move to the class summary. The class summary is a section in the report that indicates the average percentage of correct responses by category or groups of category that guide the assessment development. For example, you can see that there are 2 content areas that might include several categories of content for matter and its interactions, and the number of items that are associated. You can link to the specific items that they were showed before. And in this case, for this class, for example, 66% of responses in the pretest were in this particular category were correct. And similarly to the post-test and the other categories. Similarly to the World of Teaching Science area, some of the categories were grouped by similar type of content and affinity, and the table indicates the percentage of correct responses by the class. So this information can be interpreted as a reference, even though sometimes the number of items and the percentage might be a slight difference, but provide an overall picture of the performance of the class. And another point, again, yeah, these are the categories. Any questions about this section about the tables?
The other thing to mention, Dante, did you show that drop down menu
Okay.
that if you have multiple classes,
Classes.
right, that have different data collections, you could easily toggle between those, right, across the score reports, which is also a useful feature, especially if you have numerous classes and numerous data collections that you're doing using this CKT matter assessment instrument.
Right. Okay, the next section is the item map. The item map is a representation of items, CKT items that are rank ordered or with different levels of difficulty. An item map is basically a reference for users or teacher educators about some sense of the levels of difficulty of some particular CKT items that can support teacher educators in terms of what areas are easier than others, or how my group perform in comparison to the information displayed in the item map. So the item maps, as I'm showing now, describe the particular characteristics or the task that is measured in each item, and a score associated to that particular item. And also, well, the content category and the World of Teaching Science practice that is associated. How can, as a teacher educator, how can I interpret the item map? Let me give you an example. For example, if I know that a pre-service teacher had a score of in the assessment is about 305, it's very likely that the items that are lower and the performances that are described in the table lower than below 305 are most likely to be responded correctly by the pre-service teacher. However, if the items that are associated with higher values are less likely to be responded correctly by the pre-service teacher. So that provides some sense of what are a particular pre-service teacher or a class on average with that particular score might have some particular components of CKT that are more likely to be responded correctly. Even these descriptions that are here are not based on the particular 52 item assessment, but provide some sense of the information about CKT from the field test application. This is a representation that is helpful, for example, to compare the particular reference in terms of the content or the specifications in World of Teaching Science that are associated. It doesn't mean that, for example, the World of Teaching Science 6 is more difficult than number 2. Rather, it's the descriptions that are associated with the items are the ones that signal more difficulty for pre-service teachers. Another point is the description here in the what is the difference between high level and medium level is related to a particular score, and over 308 is considered that the score is a high level in terms of performance. I don't know if anyone has some comments about this section, so I can move to active results later.
There are no comments in the chat at the moment.
Okay, let's think of the section about that is connected to having guidance to decide what to do next. And this is the section about acting on your results. And this section provides a set of links to and descriptions to the content categories and the World of Teaching Science practices associated with sample items, assessment items, and or CKT packets, which are instructional resources developed to support teacher educators in, for example, in a pre-post administration or in teacher education courses. So you can see definitions of the different categories and a list of links to sample items and CKT packets, which are related to instructional materials and similar to the work of teaching science. If you are and these links are, for example, if I open one of these, there's a description, and you need to, once you have log in the CKT Science website, you will be able to see the item. Let me show you an example of all the tasks which are here. For example, in this case, I'm in the system, in the CKT Science website. And if I want to see the example items, I will find a list of items which are connected to the links in the score report, and I can download it. I can show, for example, if I'm a teacher educator, I can show to my class. Let me show an example. HAT design, which is the first item. So it indicates the type of World of Teaching Science practices that is associated, which is scientific models of representations, the content focus for matter, and I can download the item in this case, for example, as a PDF that can be shared with my class, for example, or for other goals. And information about the item and information about the pilot administrations in terms of the metrics of this item. Similarly, the links can provide access to the CKT packets. And the CKT packets are instructional materials for teacher educators, and that are also connected to particular categories and work of the work of teaching science and the content, and they can be downloaded and for instruction in multiple ways. So in terms of supporting teacher educators in terms of how to make decisions based on the assessment results, for example, in a pre or in a single administration, these links and these descriptions can support that process.
And just another reminder that those sample items you see there are not the actual CKT matter items that are in the programmed assessment. These are ones that we used previously on our pilot that didn't make it all the way through to the final 52 item assessment that we have online and program that you have access to.
Mm-hmm. The last point that I want to make is that if you access to the cktscience.org website, you need to log in, create an account in order to be able to see these items or packages. One thing that I also want to mention if you go to the reports is that you are able to export your data. For example, these are different tables in terms of the correct and incorrect number of pre-service teachers that responded correct and incorrectly by item, similar to by individual in terms of 0 and 1 represents correct and incorrect. So if you can go to the activity section, you can see the items that are associated, and each of these tables can be downloaded as an Excel or as some sort of a spreadsheet, similar to the post. And this information can be printed or shared in ways that can be used to support instruction. Okay, I don't know if there are other comments about the report or questions or any other interest before moving to the next section.
I think the one thing I'll just mention is that today when you created the account to access the online CKT Matter assessment instrument that David took you through, the second account that Dante was referring to at our CKTScience.org website is a separate account that you would need to create a separate login to. That's correct, right, David? Those are two separate accounts. David took you through creating the account to access the online CKT Matter assessment that you can administer to other pre-service elementary teachers that you work with in your context. But the CKTScience.org website, you would need to create a separate account so you can access those example CKT Matter items and the CKT instructional packets. Just wanted to make that clear that they're two separate accounts. Okay, so in the last 10 minutes, we just wanted to kind of reflect back on what we've shared with you about content knowledge for teaching, what it is, and particularly this online CKT Matter assessment instrument, and have you think with us about possible ways to actually use the CKT Matter instrument. So if you want to go ahead to the next slide, Dante, and I'll go ahead and put a link to a Jamboard that hopefully everybody can access. And you shouldn't have to log in, so you should be able to click on the link I just put in the chat and access it right away. But we have 3 reflection questions. And since we have a smaller group, I was actually going to give everybody 5 minutes to individually go into the Jamboard and respond. I would, if possible, would be great if you could at least post one Post-it note in the Jamboard in response to each of these questions. So we'd love to know a little bit about thinking about, you know, what are possibilities for how you might use the CKT Matter instrument in your teaching? Second, how you might use this instrument in research, right? It could in your research that you do. And then question 3, what features would be most useful to you either in your teaching and research, and if so, for those features you name, kind of like how are you thinking they would be useful to you? So Dante, if you want to go ahead and just click on that Jamboard link. Just for folks that haven't used Jamboard before, it should take you directly to the Jamboard, and you should see 3 different slides, one with each of those key questions at the top. And so here's the first question: how much you use the CKT Matter instrument in your teaching? To create a Post-it note to put on the Jamboard, on the left-hand side, there's that Post-it note icon. As soon as you click on it, a sticky note pops up. You can change the color if you like. You don't have to. You can keep it yellow, but then, or like Dante just did, blue. And then you can go ahead and add your idea for how you might use the CKT Matter instrument in your teaching. So Dante, if you want to go ahead and in my classes ... and then click save, and then it'll post on there, and then you can kind of move it to wherever you'd want to go. To go to the second slide to answer how you might use the CKT Matter instrument in your research, you can do the same thing. You just click at the top there, and then to go to the third reflection question about which of the features would be most useful to you in your teaching or research, and how so, you can just toggle those arrows at the top. You can toggle back and forth. So I was going to go ahead and pause for 5 minutes Just looking at time here to give everybody a few minutes to go ahead, and if you can, try to add at least one Post-it note to each of the 3 slides, and then we'll come back together for the last few minutes to close things out. And it looks like everybody's in there, so that's great. If you're having any trouble getting into the Jamboard, let me know, but it looks like everybody got in. So go ahead and add some Post-it notes with some of your ideas. I'll go ahead and give everybody about 1 more minute to add their ideas. We can come back together and see if there's any final questions or comments. Okay, just wanted to kind of talk and just thanks for the folks that were able to add some ideas here. So one of the responses about using the instrument you're teaching could try to apply the assessment to my pre-service teachers but everybody works in a different context. I said, because I do not teach elementary teachers, I will develop my own assessment items. So could think about how they could use this to create other assessment items. And then somebody said in the research that the scale score for the report feature can be helpful in research, and could also look over the results for each item, which may be useful for quantitative analysis. And then there was a comment of many ways to integrate it, but you need to do a deeper dive and review the question items first to be able to better respond to which features would be most useful. So I appreciate that. We know that this was a kind of broad overview of just starting to get you familiar with this instrument. So definitely do appreciate knowing that, having to spend a little bit more time to think about how it would be best used in your context is definitely important. So I want to say, see if there's any other final questions or comments before we log off, and just thank everybody again for joining us for this NARST virtual webinar and being able to learn about the online CKT Matter assessment instrument and how it could be used thinking about how it could be used in different contexts. But any final questions or comments before we log off? Okay, well, we'll be here for a few more minutes. So if you have any final things and want to stay on, feel free to do so. But also, I will send out afterwards a PDF of the slide deck, so you have access to that. And then later we'll be posting the full webinar on our cktscience.org website, as well as sharing it with the NARST virtual event committee, so they can share it through their platform as well. And if you have any additional questions later, you have our contact information, and feel free to reach out, and we would be happy to chat with you or support you in whatever particular uses or how you would like to make use of the online CKT Matter assessment. And you can feel free to share this. As David noted, this is freely available and out there. We'd love it to be used and for various to support various activities in science teaching and science research. So definitely share it with colleagues and pass on the information about this. So definitely feel free to do that at any time. And thanks again for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Jenny, and Pete, and also Dante.
Of course.
Thank you.
Roni, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.